and hello. Welcome back to another video. I am going to be talking about mental health today. I have my hair in a ponytail, so I do still have my hair. 2 weeks in a row of conspicuous hair pulled back, but not wearing any makeup today. Didn't really think I was going to film a video, but I'm procrastinating on a thing that I have to get done. And so what better thing to procrastinate with than making a video? At least I'm being semi-productive. So we're just going to talk about mental health from when I was first exposed to it to where I'm at now and everything in between. It's so interesting and fascinating because if I made a video even 5 years ago, 2 years ago, I would have said very different things. My experience and journey with mental health would be very different. So I am excited today to talk about this. I know it's another not so fun topic. I looked at my list of things to talk about that I have written down, and most of them are a little bit not so much fun. So I apologize, not like the beginning of my YouTube days last year almost. I will be coming out with a fun video a year after doing YouTube. I'm so excited for it, so that will be the next video after this. Stay tuned. Okay, so anywho, I'm just gonna get into it. So I was about 13 years old. I was in 8th grade when I first, well, I guess 12 years old. Let's start at 12 years old. So 12 years old is when I was first made aware of panic attacks. So I was in health class, or I don't think they called it biology, but like health science, and we would be learning about the human body and just different things like that, and my heart would be racing. I couldn't breathe. I would like rub my hands on my legs trying to calm myself down. I had to excuse myself a couple times, and I was like, what is going on? Like, I do not know why my body is reacting this way. But I think it's because it was the first time I was really exposed to medical stuff in school, or just in general since being a little kid. And so I've since then put the trigger back to cutting my chin open when I was 3 and the trauma that ensued because of that. So I had a huge medical phobia, and so this is my first introduction into like mental health stuff, is panic attacks. I don't even know if I knew necessarily that it was a panic attack when I was 12, but I just knew something was going on. And that continued, honestly, it continued until today, like not today, but up until the present. They don't happen as often. I have gone probably like over a year at one point without experiencing a panic attack, but I have experienced one within this past year, back in the fall of 2020. So that was not fun, but they don't happen as often. I've gone to therapy, and we'll get to therapy in a second. So that is my exposure to mental health stuff. And then in my 8th grade year, I hated everything. This is a huge part of my testimony. I'll probably share my testimony sometime way down in the future because I don't want to give you my fake testimony. And when I say fake, I mean the like cookie cutter version, the safe version. You know, if I'm going to share my testimony with the world and proclaim Jesus and give him glory, then it has to be the real one. I'm not there yet, but one day. So anywho, I hated basically everything. I didn't like my friends. I didn't like where I lived. I didn't like my personality. I didn't like my family. I didn't like that, like, no guys liked me. They all liked my friends, and my friends were choosing other friends, and I had no idea what I wanted to do, and just a lot of self-identity crisis. And so that's where it's a part of my testimony, because that identity crisis then turned me to Jesus. But that caused a lot of depression type feelings and those types of thoughts. So that's when I first, I think, casually brought up therapy to my parents, and I was like, you know, but I didn't outright ask, and when I did, they kind of shut it down. So that was a thing, and then I just kind of dealt with things throughout freshman year and sophomore year, and then junior year, it was like starting to like research a little bit more. And so I've done a lot of research on mental health with anxiety and depression, looking into borderline personality disorder, bipolar, depersonalization and derealization, things like that. I know quite a bit about, the DSM-5 and different terms that psychologists used, especially when I got to college, which we'll get to in a second. I keep jumping ahead. But that was high school. And then I remember specifically watching a video my senior year of high school, and she was talking about depression and her symptoms of depression. And I was like, I have those. That is what I feel. And so I told my mom, and Mom, if you're watching this, oh well, I'm going to tell the truth. She said, you can have depression. You just went to homecoming. And I was like, that doesn't mean anything. So, going to homecoming and having fun things in your life does not mean that you can't be depressed. So, I just kind of was like, okay, whatever. And then my grandfather died, and then I think that's where I was like, okay, you can go to therapy now. And so I went to therapy for 4 sessions, seeing a secular counselor. And then I worked on stuff with anxiety, like automatic negative thoughts and just roots of my anxiety in certain areas, things that make me anxious. And then after that, I went to college, and then my dad got diagnosed with cancer, and I was going to have to get my blood drawn. And so 2 very big triggers. 1, the anxiety of waiting to find out if my dad's going to die. And then 2, having to do something medically related. I've never gotten my blood drawn up to that point. I did get my wisdom teeth taken out, which was a whole nother traumatic experience. But we'll talk about this more in my allopathic medicine video that I will do at a later day. I did think about doing it today, but no, we're going to talk about mental health. So it caused a lot of anxiety, so much anxiety than I've ever experienced before in my life. Just daily, just terrible anxiety. And so I went to therapy again, and we did some more exposure therapy type stuff, which was good. And that did help a lot. And then I guess a year and a half went by, and then I went to therapy again because of family issues and things like that, and a little bit of grief. And then that really helps. So that's kind of my therapy mental health journey. But through all of this in college specifically, I'm researching a ton because I want to know more about my brain and how it functions. And so I even got into Myers-Briggs personality with the INFP thing. I already made a whole video on that. But I did learn a lot about borderline and bipolar and depersonalization and realization and anxiety and depression. And I go through phases in my life where I watch a lot of psychology type videos just to understand myself and other people around me and what I'm dealing with. And there's also childhood PTSD stuff that I've watched videos on and explored with myself. And so there's just a lot with mental health. And now I'm in therapy. And I also am in biblical counseling, and my therapist is a Christian, so that is a new one, Christian therapist and biblical counseling. And so with this mental health topic, I guess I kind of wanted to give you my history and bring you up to date to what I want to talk about now, which is my current views. So I definitely think you should see a Christian therapist if you are a believer, because things are always spiritual. If you're not a believer, I personally think that psychology can only get you so far, and therapy in that regard can only get you so far because you're not getting to the root of it, which is a spiritual issue. We are mind, body, and spirit, and they all interconnect. And so one thing I like to explain to people is anxiety, the outward symptoms of it, is your body's physical response. So the heart palpitations, sweating, nausea, can't breathe, whatever it is, that is your body physically responding to the thoughts inside your mind. Or maybe sometimes they're not in your mind. You don't know why you're having this physical response. And so if that's the case, then it's something deep inside your spirit, whether that's trauma, grief, unforgiveness, a certain sin, whatever it is, something is in your spirit that is not right, And so your body is physically responding in that way. And then sometimes it's in your mind as well, where you're thinking certain thoughts, or you're ruminating, or you're preoccupied with certain things. And so you're worrying and you're fearful and you want control and things like that. But that outward display of anxiety is just like, it's the symptom. It's like if you had a disease and your body was responding with a fever. The fever is not the disease. There's something deeper going on. Like, why is your body having a fever? Do you have an infection? Do you have some sort of virus or bacteria? I think bacteria classifies under infection, but you get what I mean. So that's kind of how I view mental health now in that regard. And I was actually talking with a friend recently about anxiety and anxious thoughts and stuff like that. And she really helped me work through it a little bit more, because I think, at first it's like the world just says it's a secular thing, it's anxiety, whatever. And then the biblical Christian world says no, it's a spiritual thing, it's a sin. And so I think I've kind of married the two, where having the symptoms of anxiety, like heart palpitations and sweating and whatever it is not the sin, but the underlying issue is the sin. So if you're having anxiety, if you are having physical displays, your body is in fight or flight, you are panicking, then that's not the sin. That's your body responding to the sin. I don't know if I'm doing a good job of explaining this, but there's a deeper issue underneath that's causing that anxiety, and it could be a sin or it could not be. If it's something like trauma or something like that, that's deep underlying stuff. Like a sin is, it's something that sets you apart from God, and it's of your will. And so obviously if you dealt with trauma or something like that, then anxiety in that case wouldn't be a sin for you. But if you're fearful, or you want control, or you're very worried, or you have unforgiveness, or whatever it may be, or shame, or whatever it could be, then that's where it becomes a sin. So you see that distinction? I like that she had me walk through this in my mind and clarify certain things, because I think it does get very complicated and very convoluted. And so that's why I think seeing a Christian therapist is really important, just in general, to add the spiritual aspect into everything that's going on, and then to kind of holistically help you with that regard. And then biblical counseling is really great because it infuses the Bible a lot into it. It infuses a lot of the Holy Spirit. My Christian therapist infuses the Holy Spirit as well, but it also, in biblical counseling, does the Bible, Holy Spirit, gets a lot of the roots of things. And yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at with mental health. I think America, the world, whatever, at large, doesn't deal with mental health in the best holistic way, in a sense that it is deep down, I think, a spiritual problem. And when people say that, they don't necessarily mean oh, it's a sin, but there are spiritual things happening inside of you that makes it a spiritual problem. And so you can't just cut it off from helping someone with treatments and just keep it as mind and body. You have to have the spirit involved as well. And things like DBT, which is dialectic behavioral therapy, and then CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. So from my understanding, I'm not a psychologist, but from my understanding, cognitive behavioral therapy is getting you, for example, if you were afraid of driving, it would get you to open the car door, and then it would get you to sit in your car, then it would get you to back out of the driveway, then it would get you to drive around the block. And so that's kind of the cognitive behavioral therapy. And then dialectic behavioral therapy is okay, when you're driving, try to, ground yourself or focus on what is around you in the present. So I do this when I get anxious. I'll give you an example. I take my hair and I do this, because I can feel my hair up against my nose and mouth, and I can smell it, and I can see it. So it's 3 sensories all at once. I guess if I'm super anxious, then I'll bite on it, but I usually don't do that. But you can do that if you need to kind of ground yourself and keep you in the present. It gives you something to focus on, so you're not just stuck in your mind and you're not spiraling down a cliff. And so that is really helpful. And that's kind of helpful for like automatic negative thoughts. Things like if you're driving and you're like, oh, I could just drive off this bridge right now, or I could just drive into this pole, or whatever it may be, those type of like negative thoughts. My friend explained it as it's a way for us to get those negative like feelings out and acknowledge them, but like not do anything with them and be like, okay, yeah, so that's there, but I don't want to do that. I'm not going to do that. That's wrong, whatever. But it's like a way for us to release those negative emotions in ourselves, which I thought was really interesting. And she's dealt with depression and things like that before. And so, yeah, I love having these discussions with different people, their different experiences. Medication is obviously a huge thing that comes up. And I've kind of like wavered a lot. I've talked to a lot of different people about medication. One thing I will say is that I've never taken medication. I do not have any desire to take any medication, but if I got to the point where I was heavily suicidal or whatever, if I got down to that point, then I would take it, and that's where I think it can help people. Like, I view it as like a band-aid, so it's not going to fix your problem, but if you are at risk of your life, if your life is at risk and it's that bad, then yeah, take the medicine, but don't think that it's going to fix you or whatever. And then I do think that the people that I have talked to, if they were deeper in their faith and stronger in their faith, they probably wouldn't have needed to take the medicine. So not to say like it's a faith thing, but I think that just goes to show the spiritual element of things, if that makes sense. Not saying like, oh, you're weak and of little faith, like just pray more for this stuff to go away. I don't think that's helpful, because if you don't know what to pray for, then you're never going to fix it. I think that's the biggest thing that I'm learning. It's like you need to get down to the roots of whatever it is that is causing you to be depressed or to be anxious or whatever it could be, to have some sort of personality disorder. You need to get down to the root of that, because praying more, reading your Bible more, taking a pill, going to therapy, going to just secular therapy, things like that, ultimately are not going to, they're not going to fix the problem. They're all band-aids. They're all mitigations. For example, I went to therapy 3 other times, but didn't fix the problem. It fixed that immediate problem, and it made that immediate problem better, but it was not healing. Like there was a huge iceberg, and I was just chipping away at the top. I was not getting down to the bottom. I like to view it as like an excavation. So I want to excavate everything in my life right now, and that's what I've been doing the past 6 months, is excavating. I don't just want to like dig a little hole and pull some stuff out. No, I want to dig all the way down, dig out all the things that are there beneath the surface. And yeah, so my feet are falling asleep. I do not want a repeat of a couple videos ago where I couldn't get up because my feet were asleep, but so I'm gonna sit like this now. But yeah, that's what I gotta say about mental health. There's a lot of nuance that goes into it. It's a really touchy subject, as I know. Having been on this journey for like a decade now of mental health, I completely understand how hard it is to navigate all the ups and downs and valleys, and you think, oh, I've conquered it, and then it comes up again and you're like, oh, I guess I haven't. And so I think being aware of your triggers is really good. Another thing that I really don't like about society right now is when people are triggered by something, they blame the person, and it's like, it's not that person's fault that you're triggered. Like, it really is not that person's fault. Like, for example, if I didn't have a dad, let's say my dad died when he had cancer. Let's say he died, and then I got triggered anytime someone would mention their dad or whatever it is, and then I would like be offended by them and put the blame on them. Like, no, they're just mentioning their dad. It is not their fault that they have a dad, and it's not my fault that I don't have a dad. I do have a dad, but in this hypothetical situation, I'm triggered by it. It's a time for me to take a pause, recognize, okay, I am triggered by this. This is an emotionally touchy subject for me. And so I can either lean into that and deal with it, or I can push back from it and deflect to other people. And that happens with anything. If you have been in a relationship, if you have been through really traumatic things like war or rape or abortion or abuse of any kind, you're going to be triggered. You are. And I think knowing your triggers is important so you can prepare yourself if you're going to be entering a certain situation that triggers you. And you can also possibly avoid them, although avoiding entirely is not always great, because then when you do have to get into contact with that thing, it's going to be a volcano because you're not used to it. That's why exposure therapy is so good, as I dealt with medical things. So I think that's all I'm going to say on this. I could ramble for another 10 minutes on mental health, and it's just such a fascinating topic for me. I really love it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and comment down below what you have to say about mental health. Your own journey and personal stuff would be great to know. Any insight that I didn't mention that you would like to add. I'm definitely not an expert, and I have a lot of my own experiences to go off of, and so they're just my experiences, and you have your own experiences, but these are mine and this is my viewpoint, so it is what it is, and maybe 5 to 10 years from now it will be different again. So have a great day, and the next video will be my 1-year anniversary on YouTube as I reflect back on this past year of doing YouTube and just kind of celebrate and chat with you. So that will be like just a normal chatty video on just random stuff, not a particular topic per se. So yeah, I'm really excited for that, and I'm really proud of myself. So anywho, I won't get too much into the whole YouTube thing because that has its own time and space in the next video. I'm gonna get up now and go because, as you guys know by now, I can ramble forever. But thanks for listening. I really appreciate it. Okay, bye.